football was what I did. It wasn't who I am. I never made football my identity. Although I was, madly in love with the game and passionate about it, I always knew that the game was and had to end one day. NFL stands for not for long, and I always had that in my mind.
God gives you these gifts, but you don't know what they look like. So other people see this as a business, and I just see this as a place of presence. Like,
it's all about self-growth. I believe we can all grow until the day our heart stops beating.
What advice would you give to fathers out there, whether single or married, about staying strong for their families, but not losing themselves in the process?
The biggest thing for me is being well-grounded. Children want to be parented. Children want structure. Now, are they going to rebel at times? Yes, they are. But that's a part of the growing process.
Most relationships start and end with good communication and then bad communication. I don't know where the downfall is and what happens in between, but I feel like that's the downfall of relationships is the communication.
Providing and protecting, again, is first nature to a man. Men, we're supposed to be a part of a brotherhood, and that's what we want. But sometimes in society, it's been like a taboo thing where, hey, just keep your mouth shut and keep your head down and keep working.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Club podcast. I'm your host, Sean Freitas, and today we got a powerhouse guest. I know him as Frank the Tank Summers. Now, you may know him as a 7-year NFL veteran, but what you might not know is Frank is also a single father and a marriage and family therapist specialized in men's mental health, performance, and resilience. This conversation is about to hit deeper than sports. It's about life, family, and it's becoming the best version of yourself. Thank you so much for being here today, Frank.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
All right, so you went from smashing helmets in the NFL to sitting across from men dealing with anxiety, depression, and family stress. What was the moment you realized your calling had shifted from the field into therapy?
Yeah, well, just to back up a little bit, after I was done playing, I actually had dreams of becoming a firefighter. But due to the fact that I'm a single father, I had no one to stay home with the kids for a 24 to 48-hour shift or more if needed. And that's when I shifted my mindset to, hey, maybe I can go into therapy due to the fact that, I'm still helping people. And that was a lot of the reason that I wanted to be a firefighter, was still to give back to the community, help the community, and still have the brotherhood and camaraderie. But once I seen that door was closed for me, I was able to quickly shift and pivot and go into therapy and, really pick up, where I left off as far as wanting to help people.
I know that for some people, that transition from being a pro athlete to transferring, quote unquote, into normal life, and that's only because I feel like they never got a chance to kind of find who they are underneath of their helmet and their uniform. How did you adapt to that scenario so quickly?
Yeah, so for me, one thing I've always told myself is football was what I did. It wasn't who I am. I never made football my identity. Although I was, madly in love with the game and passionate about it, I always knew that the game was and had to end one day. And that was all the way from, high school, going to college, getting a scholarship, and then also me going to college to play in the NFL. As you know, NFL stands for not for long, and I always had that in my mind. Was it the easiest thing for me to do, to understand that, the game is done with me and now I'm done with the game? No, it wasn't. But I was, always able to, pivot and, change my mindset and move on to the next thing. Still very passionate about the game. I still love the game with all my heart as I follow it closely. But now, I'm in a different chapter in life and I'm able to help people. And not only am I helping just regular people in the community, I'm also still able to help current and former athletes.
I think that's a blessing because, not many people are able to come to terms with that while they're, a professional athlete or in an aspiration to be one where, when that time comes and it's usually not on their terms, it's usually an injury or, political, just didn't, you're so great, but it's just not working out for you and you're going from one team to another. So I'm glad that you're able to do that. And because that's not an easy thing for people to move on.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was both. It was, my time was done as far as, maybe coaches, and I was injured. I had already had a back surgery, and then they wanted to do a neck surgery. And so at that point, injuries had piled up. I was, past my 30s. And, that was pretty much, I'd ran its course. And for me, I would say I was an overachiever in the NFL. I'm a 5'9", 5'10" guy on my best day, not the longest arms, and I'm playing fullback, blocking guys 6'5" and up.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so for me, I was able to reframe my mindset and say, hey, I'm thankful for what I did get out of this game. One thing that, I was thankful for was even getting the opportunity, because not many people get the opportunity. And so again, yeah, when it was time to done, I was able to pivot and, you know, move on to the next chapter.
I love that. I feel special that I got to, know you from college. You were my first professional athlete I worked with, and it's just interesting and a privilege to sit here in front of you 10 plus years later, both in different chapters of our life, but coming back together and seeing, how much each person has grown, and then what we're each doing in the community, I think is a special thing.
Yeah, and while we're on that topic, I just want to say and congratulate to you and give you your flowers while we're here face to face, and just, what an amazing job you've done. I see the work that you do in the community. I see the work that you do, with the clients around here and everyone around. You have an amazing staff who all speak very highly of you, and so from seeing you back at UNLV in the gym, where you were stretching and working on me, I mean, you've come a ways, and so I just want to congratulate you and say how proud I am of you, you know what I mean? Because if no one seen this vision that you had, I don't even know if you've seen it. But here
I did. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, because it was definitely a tough road getting here, and I can now, almost have to remove myself from the business a little bit. I was struggling seeing beyond these four walls, and when I got the opportunity to do so and to really take a deep dive, like what is my purpose here for? And it was so much bigger than just what you see here. So I'm excited to bring that new vision, to bring a nonprofit into the play, and really show people the purpose that was behind the company, because they just saw the vision, but maybe not and I didn't know what the purpose was until a year ago.
Yeah.
Now I want to show them what that purpose is and how to live a missionary lifestyle versus a mercenary lifestyle, and really just help people. I know it sounds cliche, everyone says that, but I think that helping people is one of the greatest gifts that God can give you.
Yep.
If it feels good, and it feels good to do it every time, even if it's not reciprocated, you still have to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, I actually seen a Bible quote earlier where it says, we're put here to be servants, not to get served. And you've been serving the community and everyone here. I've benefited for years of it. And again, man, just thank you so much. We're so happy to have a place like this here in Las Vegas. I would say this place is definitely a one of one.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So fatherhood and identity. So you're a single father. How has being a dad shaped not just how you show up in life, but also the way you guide other men with theirs?
Yeah, so fatherhood for me has been up and down roller coaster. I currently, have a 16-year-old daughter, and I got some gray hairs from her. But I love her more than anything in the world. And the challenge that I've had with her, has been, fulfilling in a way that not only have I grown, but she's grown. And it's really challenged me to approach her differently. She's not an athlete. She hasn't been coached by a football coach. She hasn't been able to, reciprocate the fact that, I'm yelling at her, but expecting the best out of her.
Yes.
And so I've had to change my tune in how I deal with her. And obviously, with getting my master's in marriage and family therapy, there was a lot of self-reflection and saying, hey, man, this door's been closed. This door's been closed. Let me try this route. And I think she made a comment one day and she was like, wow, those therapy classes are really helping you. You know what I mean? And again, it's all about self-growth. I believe we can all grow until the day our heart stops beating.
I love that you say that, because I think a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, I want to be the dad that I never had, or so on and so forth. And what happens is you end up serving the child what you think versus what they actually need and want.
Yep.
And I think that's, that was an important thing that I realized, that it's like, you got to give someone what they need and what they want. It's beyond you, you know?
Well, at the end of the day, they're children. We have to remember that. And believe it or not, children want to be parented. Children want structure. Now, are they going to rebel at times? Yes, they are. But that's a part of the growing process. I don't think there's one child out there who followed every obeying commandment from their parent, as well as I don't think there's a perfect parent out there. You think you're the perfect parent until one day your child grows up and they're like, oh, mom or dad, remember you did this? Yeah, I didn't appreciate that. I didn't like that. Half the time parents can't remember it, but the kids do.
Absolutely.
And so there's always going to be a complaint from a kid of their parent. And my thing is, let me take from what my mother did for me and pass those good qualities on to my, kids. And then the things that I wish was corrected with my mother, let me add those into the mix with the ingredients, and hopefully, my kids get, two sides of good things. Now, whatever they don't like about me, hopefully they'll take on the good qualities they did like from me and learn from me and pass those on to their children, which are my grandchildren, and they'll add better qualities.
Yes.
And that's how we build generations. That's how we, keep growing and growing for the betterment.
I think, I recently just reconnected with my mom. I brought her into to here. It's the first time she's ever seen any part of my business over 10 years. Just put that in perspective. And, was she a perfect mom? That's rephrase that mindset is she was just doing the best job that she could with what she had.
Yes.
I mean, I've got so many opportunities and things that I can use for help, and she didn't have none of those. Come from a small island, and come from a single mom. I never even knew my dad. So where I'm at now, she was just doing the best job that she could. I can't hold that against her, and I'm so glad that I realized that at 34 years old, than not having the opportunity to be with her.
Right, but also it took you growth, it took you maturity, it took you life experience to realize that. As a 15, 16-year-old kid, you don't get those things. You don't understand those things. It's too much for the brain. And that's why sometimes people as adults have better relationships with their parents than they did in their teens.
Absolutely.
Because now they get things. There's times I call my mother and be like, hey, Mom, I get it. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I get it.
And that, I believe, is a true blessing,
Yes.
So the locker room versus the therapy room. So in the NFL locker room, vulnerability isn't exactly the culture. How do you help men break through that wall of silence when it comes to emotions and mental health?
Yeah, well, the first thing we do is we talk about emotions. Do you know what they are? You know what I mean? And if not, we define them. We talk about them. After we talk about the emotions, sometimes, guys think they know what they are, and then we talk about what triggers certain emotions, because at the end of the day, we want to get to the core root of whatever the emotion is and what triggers it, and so a lot of times men don't know how to communicate emotions. Men are great at withdrawing, getting busier with work. Some guys have told me, hey man, I pick up extra overtime. I'll stay at work as long as I can. Or some guys, turn to substance, whether it's alcohol or things of that nature, but a lot of times men don't know how to communicate their emotions, and emotional regulation is a real thing. I spent all last summer teaching it to kids at Boys and Girls Club, but actually I realized not a lot of adults have emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And so being able to get them to open up and communicate that and understanding it, it's been huge.
And I think that, potentially not a lot of women give men the space they need to be emotional available and actually take a listen to what they have to feel like. We're always quick to it's like, oh yeah, men should be this way, they should be tough, you should be a provider, you should be that, why is he acting out, why did he not pay attention to me,
right,
why is he looking at other women,
right,
those are flags, like something's going on the inside of that individual,
right. And naturally men are providers, our natural instinct is protect and to provide, and so of course when things may be hard at home or finances could be better, men are thinking always of ways to add to the finances of home. And so again, if your wife or your significant other is talking to you and you're thinking like, damn, I got this bill coming up, that bill coming up, yeah, you're not mentally present because you're sitting here thinking or calculating how you could go out and make more money, but again, it takes a woman to understand what a man is actually going through. And that's a communication that needs to take place and probably doesn't take place in most relationships, but the minute we can start having that conversation with our significant other, the more successful relationships will be, I think.
Yeah, I think most relationships start and end with good communication and then bad communication. I don't know where the downfall is and what happens in between, but I feel like that's the downfall of relationships is the communication.
Well, yeah, I think it could be, what I hear most is, someone's not present, usually the man. Well, again, like I said, why isn't he present? Well, finances haven't been the best, or, we're trying to buy a new car, or we're trying to buy a new house, or, we have, our kids have outgrown this place. And so, yeah, men are constantly, on the hamster wheel, as you call it, thinking about, well, how can I provide? providing and protecting, again, is first nature to a man. And so, yeah, that sums it up.
So you've lived under the pressure of being an athlete at the highest level. What parallels do you see between athletic performance and the performances men face in their career, their marriage, and their family?
It's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, performing as an athlete, those are pressures that I don't think a lot of people can deal with. And I say that to say this: when I was with the Bills, they were trying to replace me my last year there, and they were bringing guys in before practice, warming them up, working them out to see if they wanted to sign them on the team. And they did. For about 3 weeks, they'd sign a guy, and he'd stay for a week, and then they'd release him, bring another guy in. Mind you, I'm watching them working.
Yes.
We're in practice stretching for warm-ups. They're working the guy out right over there. After practice, he'd have a locker and everything. One day I told the coach, I said, hey, man, you can sign any and everybody you want to, but I'm not done. So you're going to keep signing them, and you're going to keep sending them home. But again, that goes back to a man, knowing he has to provide for his family, and really the same thing is at home. The normal day-to-day lives of men working in corporate America or just dealing with the stressors of life, I mean, they range from all kind of things. Those are real life problems, not to mention the past trauma that a lot of men have dealt with.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of men talk about past trauma, and if you hear some of these stories of things that men have been through, whether they're, mistreated growing up, abused, starved, pretty much in some cases, just left for dead, it's heartbreaking. And then, we wonder why they can't, express emotion, why they isolate themselves. And it's because this is the way they were raised up until they were 18, and then at 18 they were just released to the world.
And it's like it's that survival mechanism. So like I got an energy reading the other day by one of my massage therapists, and this is the third time she's brought up something that happened when I was 23. I can't for the life of me think about what she's talking about, but I know it's buried into the subconscious. My brain doesn't want to go and uncover what it was. This is the third time that she's brought this up. So I think that naturally we bury it, and then sometimes we even forget the shit that you've been through.
Correct. And that's because, like you just said, it's a survivor's mentality. You know what I mean? That's the coping mechanism you use to push forward. You deleted it out your brain. And so if somebody even showed you a picture of it, there's a possibility you say, hey, I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But again, that's the survival tactics that we use to get through life.
So breaking the stigma, men's mental health is often hidden behind pride and silence. How do you personally work to shatter that stigma and make it normal for men to ask for help?
You'd be surprised. I run a men's group every Wednesday, once a week, and when we've gotten together as men, guys kind of let their guard down. And as you hear a story, you're like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Not only can you relate to that, but you understand now, hey, I'm not the only one going through this. And a lot of times as men, we think, oh, why me? Why did I get chose for this? I'm the only one going through this, But the reality of it is you're not. It's just no one else is talking about it. So what I've tried to provide is a safe space, for men to be seen and heard. Not only that, I tell people, hey, man, I'm just a facilitator here. This is your group. We can go in any direction you want. You know what I mean? I have topics of choice that we can go through the week. But if you guys come in and say, hey, we want to talk about this today. Okay, cool, let's go. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Let's go. Yeah, I want to talk about that. And guess what? It's worked out perfectly fine like that. I've had men have dialogue amongst each other just about certain situations, and given, past situations and how the outcome was. And it's been amazing, And again, men, we're supposed to be a part of a brotherhood, and that's what we want. But sometimes in society, it's been like a taboo thing where, hey, just keep your mouth shut and keep your head down and keep working, And so that's what I want to do, and that's what I've been doing is, just one by one letting men know, hey, it's okay to talk. It's okay to open up. We're all going through this. We're all trying to attain the same goal, which is making it through this one life we get.
Yeah. And that's why when I was telling you out there, I was like, okay, what's next for the company? And I want to focus more on mental health. I feel like that was the part that was missing. So it's like, it's so important to have the gym because, like I was telling you, like when I would get off work, I couldn't wait to go work out with my friends, and I want people to experience that again at the highest level because that is therapy.
Yeah.
And then they won't keep things in.
Right.
And it creates a space. So like your space is that therapy room and that group setting, and mine just so happens to be. It's funny because God gives you these gifts, but you don't know what they look like. So other people see this as a business, and I just see this as a place of presence. Like he said, I give you this gift in this form, but everyone sees it as a business. I just see it as this is the gift I was given, the platform I'm able to do it on.
Yeah.
So it's like, and once I saw that, I'm like, okay, I want to keep doing this. I want more of this, and I want it in more places.
Yep. And the thing is, man, if you ask pro athletes or just athletes in general what they miss most about the sports, most of them will say the locker room. It's not even taking the field on game day. It's the locker room. It's the camaraderie. It's the brotherhood. Same thing in military. Same thing in the fire department, police department. It's the brotherhood. That's the one place you get to go, let your hair down, be yourself. Obviously it's competitive, when you're out there, but everything is just geared towards the brotherhood. I got your back, you got mine.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, when guys no longer have that, they're in an identity crisis. Who am I? What am I? What happened to me? There's no longer that outlet, and so I think the sooner we could find a way to, get these small communities back together, and it doesn't have to be in a locker room. Like you said, it could be in a gym. Hey, I got a men's group. We lift every Wednesday and Friday at this time. Feel free to come. We got great music. We're going to get a good lift in, and, then we're going to go on about our day. Okay, cool. That's the brotherhood. That's the camaraderie guys were looking for. You know what I mean? Just like today when we worked out, I felt the energy.
That
I was like,
fun, man. Yeah. I was actually looking forward to it all weekend. Just like it was something new and different. I get to be around someone I haven't seen in a long time. And that was great.
Yeah.
That was more. The workout was impactful, but that alone was like a little. Now I'm ready to have a great week because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So the toolbox. So you use solution focused therapy. And DBT in your practice. Can you break what each of those down are?
Yeah. So I'm really more of a SFBT guy, solution focused based therapy. And that's because my background from athletics. You either catch the ball or you don't. You know what I mean? And my whole thing to my clients is, let's get to the root of the problem and let's eliminate it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna be very direct on what we can do. I love to give homework. You know what I mean? That way I'm checking in with you and I'm keeping my clients accountable week in and week out. But, solution is, SFBT is very direct. You know what I mean? Like I said, you either catch the ball or you don't. So cool, how do we want to get past this? Okay, this is the problem? Okay, well, let's try this. How has this been working? Okay, you haven't tried that? Okay, well, we'll keep that there. Have you tried this? Yeah, I've tried this. Okay, how has that been working? It hasn't. Okay, cool, let's cross that off the list. What else do we have up here that we can try or possibly, invest in? And so yeah, man, I'm a straight to the point guy when it comes to therapy. I want to get straight to the point, the root of it, and see how we can fix it. And I tell my clients, hey, my job as a therapist is for my clients to fire me. I want you to fire me. Now I'm always here for a tune-up or maintenance, you know what I mean? But I want you to fire me because that lets me know whatever issue you came to me with, we've already, conquered it. Now you're ready to go back into the world.
And it's interesting you say that because I think most of the time you go to the therapist and it's the same thing over and over and over again. I'm telling you, if you have a real problem that you need to deal with in your life, sitting across from someone that's just going to listen to you is not going to get you to where you need to be. No. There has to be a challenge there.
Yep.
There has to be something to overcome.
Yep.
Or else 10 years later, not only would you be in the same place, you'll have affected relationships all around you. And most importantly, the relationship with yourself is the shell of what it should be.
Correct. So one of the things I like to use in my SFBT is the miracle question. And the question goes like this. I have a red and blue pill. Which pill would you like to take? And they say, I'll take the blue pill. Okay, cool. Well, you take that pill the night before you go to sleep. You wake up, all of your problems are gone. And they say, okay. And I'll say, hey, what does your day look like now? From the moment you open your eyes to the time you go to sleep, what does that perfect day look like for you? And a lot of people they don't know. They've never been able to visualize a perfect day on what it looks like for them. And you'd be surprised on how that simple question awakens, so much positivity in their mind, because it's like, wow, I just want to do this. I just want to do that.
I'm like sitting over here trying to think about mine as
You know what I mean?
but I can't. It can't. It's like I'm lost.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
exactly. And not a lot of people know that. But again, it awakens the thought process. You know what I mean? Because so many times, we go to sleep and we wake up with the same problems or new problems on top of those problems.
Yes.
And it's like, damn, does this ever end? But very rarely do we get to stop and pause and see what a perfect day looks like for us.
Yes.
And so again, once you're able to visualize things, you're now able to see them and possibly put them into play sometime, if not in the near future, in the future.
Yep, absolutely. No, I love that. Fatherhood playbook. What advice would you give to fathers out there, whether single or married, about staying strong for their families, but not losing themselves in the process?
Yeah, I would say obviously the biggest thing for me is being well-grounded. Again, knowing who you are and what you are, and also, raising your kids with a solid foundation. We all want to raise good kids, but what does that look like? For me, that may be in a form of, hey, kids, I want you to respect everybody. Not only respect everybody, but respect yourselves. Try hard at everything you do. Don't quit and don't give up. We want to pass on good traits, characteristics to our kids so that they can become, at someday, adults who give back to the world. One of the greatest compliments I can get from people is, your kids are so mannerable. Your kids are great. I've never had any problem with your kids. Every time I see them, they speak, they open the door, hello, thank you, things like that. And so as a parent, you're going to go through times of rebellion with kids, and with that, I'm going to say, hey, don't panic. Don't panic. Kids just test parents, and with those tests, just like in school, we have to pass them. And once we pass them, we can move on to the next.
Yes.
But being a parent, I would say is one of the best. I call it the it's a thankless job, because again, kids are in the fire right now. They don't understand what parents are going through. So everything you're doing, you're kind of going through it without a pat on the back, but you're doing it for the betterment of them. It's almost like you're sacrificing yourself, whether it's, your personal time, picking up an extra job, whatever it is you have to do for your kids, you're making sure that they're okay. And hopefully one day it gives them a good foundation in life to where they can go be what they want, whatever it is. And we don't know how kids will turn out. We could try, but we don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so what I would say is just be consistent in all areas with kids. Be consistent and love them. I had a therapist tell me, hey man, just love her. Love your kids. Love them. Even when they do bad, love them. And they'll eventually see that.
Yeah, they know everything. You know, they don't forget anything.
Yeah.
When your son looks back at you 20 years from now, not as an NFL player and not as a therapist, but as a man, what do you hope he says about who you are?
I hope he's proud of me. I hope he's proud of the father that I was for him. By far, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But hopefully in this lifetime, I could show him that I've learned from mistakes and that I didn't make them again. And I hope that he can see, I hope he can learn from me what a true man is. And so every day I wake up, I know he's watching me, from little things to big things. And I just hope he can say, hey, my dad was an example of a role model and somebody that, I wanted to be like. I don't think there's a bigger compliment that a man could get from his son than his son saying, hey, that was my superhero.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's incredible, man. And I think that's special.
Yeah.
Special, and it's earned from little pieces over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Frank, thank you so much for being on here, man. That was a great conversation, especially about the kids. To everyone listening, remember, 1% isn't about perfection. It's about showing up every day and choosing growth. This is Sean Freitas. Hope to catch you on the next episode, and I appreciate your time again, Frank. Where can they find you to schedule a session for therapy?
So I'm at Next Chapter Therapy in Green Valley, in Green Valley area, Las
Okay.
Vegas. They can call in and schedule there, or they could find me on Instagram at Frank_Summers_senior.
Okay, and I'd love to do a little men's group thing.
Let's
here.
do it.
Yeah, I remember I was in a men's group, and I didn't want to go, but my client Dan Yige is a good friend of mine. He said, "Come to this church men's group," and it was
Okay.
like, man, I didn't want to be speaking in front of people,
Yeah.
but I needed it so bad, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty special here. I only know him. Everyone else is a stranger, so.
Yeah.
You know, but I understand that there's a reason why I was supposed to be there at that time. So those groups are really important, especially when you don't know anyone. I think those are the best ones. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to go there with your friends, but when you go there with people that you don't know and you can kind of grow together with a
Yep.
stranger, that I think is powerful.
Yeah, definitely, man. Let's do it. Let's get it together, and I think it'll be an amazing turnout.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thanks for having me.